Galw'r aelodau I drefn a chroesawu'r aelodau yn ôl wedi toriad yr haf, a mae'n bleser gen I gyhoeddi yn unol ar rheol sefydlog 26.75 fod deddf treth gwaredu tirlenwi Cymru 2017 a deddf undeb llafur Cymru 2017 wedi cael cydsyniad brenhinol ar y 7fed o Fedi 2017. Yr eitem cyntaf I ni y prynawn yma yw'r cwestiynau i'r Prif Weinidog a'r cwestiwn cyntaf Russell George.
Diolch Flawydd. Will the First Minister make a statement on the Welsh Government's consultation, Services Fit for the Future?
Yes, we welcome all contributions to this important consultation. We've already received over 700 responses, and these will be used to ensure any future legislative change is the most effective it can be for the people of Wales. The consultation will run until the end of this month.
First Minister, I hope you will join me in recognising the important work that community health councils do across Wales. I've had the opportunity of meeting Powys Community Health Council on a number of occasions over the summer recess. And one concern they've raised with me is the direction that the Welsh Government White Paper seems to be taking. A particular issue that they have raised with me is that the White Paper does not contain any recognition of the complexities of cross-border services, and neither does it refer to the important scrutiny role which community health councils provide on behalf of patients. You will understand, of course, that the vast majority of my constituents access services across the border. What reassurance can you provide to Powys Community Health Council that Welsh patients using services over the border have an effective advocate if future arrangements change?
Well, we want that to continue, of course, and that's why it's so important that Powys and other CHCs respond to the consultation so that we can take forward legislation with the broadest consensus possible.
Steffan Lewis.
Community health councils have independence, expertise and powers to intervene on behalf of patients in order to uphold their safety and their dignity. So can the First Minister explain how taking such functions away from the local level and centralising them nationally and then watering them down is going to enhance patient safety and dignity?
We have to remember, of course, that the CHCs are not an inspectorate, that we have the health inspector that does that. They have a role, of course, in terms of acting as patient voices and in many other ways. I can say to members there has been a very positive meeting with the CHC board. There's a lot of common ground in the white paper itself. There are some issues, of course, that will need to be discussed further, but the intention is to strengthen the voice of the patient across the whole of Wales, and we look forward to working with CHCs in order to deliver that.
Cwestiwn 2, Jane Bryant.
Diolch Llywydd. Will the First Minister make a statement on end-of-life care in South East Wales?
Yes, our £3 million investment in the new hospice in Malpas that opened last week demonstrates our commitment to end-of-life care in the south east of Wales. The updated end-of-life care delivery plan published in March 2017 also sets out the actions we're taking to deliver a collaborative approach to improving end-of-life care throughout Wales.
Thank you, First Minister. Last week, along with the Cabinet Secretary for Health, I attended the launch of the new state-of-the-art inpatient unit at Malpas. The 15-bedded unit offers support for people with complex symptom management needs and end-of-life care. And as you mentioned, the investment of £3 million of Welsh Government money for St David's Hospice is a good example of how to deliver first-class hospice care and helps to meet the demand of palliative care services in South East Wales. So will you join me, First Minister, in paying tribute to the vision of the Board of Directors at St David's, particularly the Chief Executive, Emma Saesneg, and the tremendous support of the local community and volunteers, and show that investment from Welsh Government in partnership with a health board and local authority can make a real difference to the lives of people when they need it most?
Yes, it's an excellent example of partnership working, because the investment has enabled the St David's Hospice Care team to deliver a palliative care model, which is universally recognised as being a good example of first-class care. Now that the new building is complete and open, the charity, of course, will now be able to support more people who need their help at the end of their lives, and I very much congratulate the charity itself for the work that it has put in to make sure that the opening came about.
Nick Ramsey.
Diolch.
First Minister, can I concur with Jane Bryant's comments and also welcome the opening of the new hospice at Malpas. As Chief Executive Emma Saesel has said, this is a landmark development and will hopefully plug previously identified gaps in provision over the last few years. I'm sure it will go from strength to strength. You'll know, First Minister, I frequently raise the issue of motor neurone disease in this chamber and its devastating impact on sufferers, estimated up to 5,000 across the UK at any one time. A key finding of the recent Demos report into the financial effect of MND on sufferers and their families has said that services can often be slow to respond to MND sufferers' needs because of the rapidity of the progress of the disease. So can you undertake to look again at the provision of services, including hospice and palliative care in Wales, to ensure that, yes, we've got a wonderful new building in Malpas, and that's one part of the jigsaw, but also to ensure that the services that are provided are able to keep pace with sufferers of complex diseases such as MND?
The member raises an important issue. It was remiss of me not to congratulate him, of course, on his recent wedding and his dedication in coming back here. Maybe that was not a choice that he faced, but nevertheless he is here. But my congratulations, obviously, to him and his new wife. Motor neuron disease is a devastating illness. It is usually very progressive. Sometimes it moves more quickly in some people than others. It's difficult to predict the rapidity of the progress of the illness, but unfortunately, of course, it's known what the illness eventually does to the body. We want to work with the motor neuron disease charities in order to make sure that the level of care is right for the individual. Because we know that it's not possible to predict with any accuracy how the disease will progress in terms of its speed, and that is certainly something that we've been working with the motor neuron disease charities in order to achieve.
Cwestiynau nawr gan arweinwyr y pleidiau. Arweinydd Plaid Cymru, Lian Wood.
Diolch, Llywydd. It's almost 20 years to the day since the vote in 1997 to establish this institution, and with a new term must come a new chapter in the Welsh story. First Minister, I personally won't forget the triumph where so many of us in this chamber and outside helped to deliver a victory for our nation on that night. Governing ourselves is a victory in itself. No other country has governed another well. But the Welsh Government is a different institution to the National Assembly. I agree with Ron Davies when he says that ministers need to ask themselves some difficult questions about delivery. First Minister, do you agree with him?
No, Ron, of course, had the opportunity to shape the direction of the National Assembly, but we know, of course, his unfortunate story. I'm proud of what we've achieved over the past 20 years. When I look back at what Wales was like in the 90s, a country lacking confidence, where young people wanted to leave, a country that really had no strong profile abroad, that wasn't happening. And one thing that strikes me is that it was accepted as normal that unemployment should be substantially higher in Wales than the rest of the UK. That was seen as something that was inevitable. That's no longer the case. Unemployment's either at the UK average or below the UK average. I could go on, of course, as you might expect me to do, but I pick out certain comparisons there with the 90s and the way that Wales has changed for the better in the 20 years since the referendum.
Well, people are still leaving, First Minister, as you well know. And last year you said that Labour is halfway through a decade of delivery. But for many people, the current performance of devolved government is mediocre, to say the least, and has been seen as making no difference to the lives or the quality of public services. And those aren't my words, but the findings of research on attitudes to devolution that you will have read yesterday. If we are halfway through a decade of delivery, why is it that our health and education outcomes are consistently worse than those in Scotland? Why is our GCSE pass rate this year worse than the Scottish equivalent? Why are waiting lists longer on average? And that's without even mentioning comparisons to England or to other Western European countries. What is the explanation for your government not delivering on the outcomes that people both expect and deserve?
Well, far from it, I don't think Scotland is the Shangri-La that is portrayed. There have been real problems in the Scottish education system. There are still issues over the attainment gap, which we have closed and they have not. If we look at health, if we look at the 1990s, it was normal in the 90s, in the days of a Tory government, for people to wait 2 years for an operation. That was normal. People accept that. No more. No more. We know that waiting times have been reduced substantially despite having an enormous cut in our budget in that time. We've just seen the best GCSE results ever. I mean, Scotland has its own education system. You can't compare their qualification system with ours because it's so different. We are building schools across the whole of Wales. In England, nothing is being built. We're proud of that fact. If we look at the economy, our unemployment rate is 4.3%. That would have been undreamt of in the 90s. We are still attracting excellent investment into Wales, the best foreign direct investment figures for the past 30 years. And that's because we have a government that is able to go out and sell Wales. Whatever the politics of that government, the profile that ministers have is far, far greater than was the case in the 1990s. And that's why we've been so successful in bringing jobs into Wales.
You sound complacent, First Minister. And your answers here this afternoon seem to suggest that things are already going so well, that this is as good as it gets. Not so much a decade of delivery, but it's a decade of complacency. And we need, First Minister, a country where there is a premium on self-government. Making our own decisions is an essential first step, and Plaid Cymru is proud that this country has taken that step. But the next step is realising that premium. Being a Welsh citizen should mean that there's a public service bonus, a devolution dividend then, if you like. So I'll make one challenge to you today as we mark 20 years since that yes vote. By the end of this Assembly term, will the Labour government have closed the gap with Scotland on health, education and the economy? And if we approach the end of this term and there seems to be no sign of a closing of that gap, will you then accept and admit that Wales needs a new government?
Well, it's not me she wants to convince, it's the electorate, and she's not convinced them of that. There's no point complaining to me about the lack of success of her own party. I do not accept there's a gap between us and Scotland. I don't accept that there's a gap between us and Scotland on education. Scotland's unemployment rate is regularly higher than ours. It's not as if Scotland economically is doing fantastically well. From our perspective, I'm proud of what we've achieved over the past 20 years. The electors of Wales have recognised that. They've seen that in election after election, and there will be no sign of complacency from us. We know that it gets harder and harder to convince people to vote for us the longer that we are in government, and we will work harder and harder to ensure that people continue to give us their support.
Arweinydd yr wrthblaid Andrew RTD.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, in August, the report about Chris Wade was published from the Abertawe Bro Morgannwg Health Board. This was a desktop review into the employment by that health board of Chris Wade, a man who is currently serving 21 years, a 21-year sentence for sexually motivated killing of 65-year-old Christian James. In the years leading up to Miss James's murder, Chris Wade was the subject of no fewer than 3 separate allegations of sexual abuse amongst vulnerable patients. At the time of the desktop review publication, my party criticised the report for its lack of independence. It is our belief it can never be acceptable for a health board to investigate serious concerns about itself. Following several calls from my party and indeed the BMA and others in this chamber, your government announced Health Inspectorate Wales' role in reviewing the report, the desktop report that the Health Board undertook. How on earth can it be acceptable for a health board to investigate such serious accusations of its own failing?
It's a complicated picture, and I understand the grief that the family has faced. There were 3 allegations, that's correct. No action was taken by the police with regard to those allegations, and so no criminal proceedings were taken. That said, it is highly important that there is an investigation by Health Inspectorate Wales into not just the lessons that can be learned, but the lessons that can be learned in order that we can be assured as a government that any failings that may have been in the system at that time are corrected, and that the family then can be assured that the Health Board did all that it could have done to deal with the situation. We won't know the answer to that question until, of course, we get the findings of the Health Inspectorate's report.
First Minister, it's my understanding that not one patient, not one medical professional or not one member of staff was asked to give a formal interview in the course of the review. That surely is unacceptable. Can you confirm that Health Inspectorate Wales will take evidence from clinicians, from patients and, above all, anyone associated with the investigation that allowed the tragedy to unfold and ultimately ended up in this gentleman being sentenced to 21 years in prison?
It is absolutely crucial that the investigation is independent. It's not for me then to tell Health Inspectorate Wales what they should and shouldn't do, but I think it's proper for me to say that I would expect them to gain as much evidence as broadly as possible in order for their final findings to be as robust as possible.
I think most people would say it would be fair for you or your government, in the shape of the Cabinet Secretary, to set the terms of reference for the Health Inspectorate Wales inquiry, report, investigation, call it what you will, because obviously he has asked them to do that. And when I found out that not one medical person had been asked, not one patient had been asked to give evidence to this investigation, that is unbelievable, I have to say. And I do call upon you to make very strict terms of reference for this investigation from Health Inspectorate Wales, so that the report that they present to your government can enjoy the confidence of the members here, but the wider public, that they are being protected against people like Chris Wade working within our health service. Will you give that commitment that the terms of reference are robust enough from the Health Inspectorate Wales inquiry into this inquiry, so that we can have confidence that patients and members of the public are protected from the likes of Chris Wade ever working within the health service here in Wales? The
answer to the question is yes, of course. We want to make sure that the investigation itself is A, independent, and B, robust. I'm not sure whether he is saying that in the past not enough people were interviewed, or whether that's happening now. But whichever way, I'll make sure that that is looked at to make sure that that issue is dealt with. But it is obviously important that the findings are seen to be robust and can be supported by all in this chamber.
Arweinydd Grŵp UKIP, Neil Hamilton.
Diolch yn fawr, Llywydd. In the government's document, Brexit and Fair Movement of People, it acknowledges that in the British Social Attitude Survey in 2013, 86% of the UK population wanted to see immigration reduced. And yet the policy of the government here in Cardiff in this document is to oppose the introduction of any form of target for a reduction of immigration. The latest figures show a significant reduction on what we've seen in recent years, but even at 250,000 a year net migration, which we currently have, that would add, if sustained, 8 million to our population by 2032, 21 million by 2064, when the population of the UK would be 85 million. That is just not sustainable. And before the First Minister says that, well, immigration is absolutely vital for economic growth, in 2014, the Office for Budget Responsibility did a study of the effects of immigration at current levels, 250,000 net a year. That adds 0.4% to GDP, but also 0.4% to population, so that GDP per capita wouldn't improve. It's neither here nor there. Isn't it time that the Welsh Government woke up to the realities of life in modern Britain?
Immigration should be tailored according to the needs of the UK. Targets, it is artificial. What is the point of targets? Let's examine that situation. Let's say, for example, we wish to recruit more doctors into the Welsh NHS, but we're told, sorry, we've reached the quota for this year. That's nonsensical. Why on earth would that be a sensible policy for any government to adopt? So we have offered a view on migration. We don't know what the UK government's view is yet. This is our offer in terms of what we think the system should look like. But it's absolutely crucial, of course, that the policy is tailored to what the UK actually needs, not an artificial target.
The First Minister knows that that is not the only way in which targets can work. And in particular, the problems that we have for the levels of immigration that we currently suffer are not in the field of professionals like doctors and nurses, where they will always be able to qualify for whatever the skills needs of the country are. But at the bottom end of the income scale, in particular, for those who are on low skills or unskilled, there are very significant factors which are at work which push down the levels of income that people are likely to get. And given that Wales is a low-wage economy, We're at the bottom of the income scale for the nations and regions of the UK. Shouldn't we be more concerned to reduce the inflow of unskilled and low-skilled migration in order to protect those who are most vulnerable in Welsh society?
I think the game was given away by the leader of UKIP when he said that immigration was something that we suffer. I have to say to him that the proportion of EU citizens in Wales is very, very low, well below 5% of the population. It is the case that people work in Wales, that's true, but he needs to speak to businesses who will tell him that they need to be able to recruit people in many, many different jobs, some of them highly skilled, some of them not so skilled, but those people are needed. And what I say to him is we should suffer immigration, as he would put it, on the level that is appropriate to the needs of our economy. And I have to say to him, he talks about a low-wage economy, he is complicit in driving down wages. Did he support the minimum wage? No, he didn't support the minimum wage. Of course he didn't. Is he supportive of ways of enforcing the minimum wage to stop anybody being exploited regardless of where they're from? No, I doubt that is the case. He cannot, on the one hand, complain about the driving down of wages when his own record shows that he was against the minimum wage and therefore happy to see wages driven down when he was in another place.
But the First Minister knows that the policy of my party was in favour of the minimum wage. In the days when I was a member of the Conservative Party was against the introduction of a minimum wage. But UKIP has always supported the introduction of a minimum wage. But of course, there hasn't been a single prosecution in Wales for breach of minimum wage legislation, even though we know that this is occurring. So the Welsh Government, for all the protestations of the First Minister, does absolutely nothing to make its own policy work. When I used the word suffer in terms of immigration policy, what I meant there was that the scale and speed of this immigration is imposing massive strains and stresses upon not just public services, but also on the incomes of those who are at the bottom end of the income scale. At the moment, we're in a period of economic growth, but of course the problems really become apparent when the economic cycle is on a downswing. And there's a wealth of academic studies, some of which are referred to in this document, which shows, such as the study of the Bank of England, for example, that showed that a 10% increase in the proportion of migrants working in particular jobs in particular regions leads to a 2% fall in wages. This is a serious matter in an economy where the average for earnings in Wales are only 75% of the UK's.
Well, first of all, I am surprised to hear him say that he did not stand as a Conservative candidate in 1997 on a manifesto commitment not to oppose the minimum wage. I just remember that was the case at that time, conveniently forgotten now. Secondly, as he knows full well, or as being mischievous, the Welsh Government is not the prosecuting authority when it comes to minimum wage legislation. It's not devolved. It's a matter for the UK Government to target resources towards the appropriate authority in order for those prosecutions to take place. He talks of evidence that shows that wages are being driven down. Where is that evidence? I see no evidence that that is the case. I see evidence of wages being driven down by some employers who are unscrupulous. I see wages being driven down by people who are working on casual contracts in the private sector. I see wages being driven down by the policies of the UK Government, removing things such as tax credits that help the low paid, while, of course, putting in place tax cuts for the highest paid. None of us wants to see low pay. I understand that. But can I suggest that he targets his guns at the true problem here, which is the policy that is put in place by the current UK Government?
Question 3, Mark Reckless.
What discussions has the First Minister had with the UK Government regarding the Welsh Government's Brexit and fair movement of people policy document?
They have not wished to have any discussions, though we have sent in the document.
The First Minister has, though, it seems, had discussions with the First Minister of Scotland and development of joint strategy and approach with the Scottish Government. Does the First Minister not appreciate that Wales voted leave in the referendum? And he said himself that had a lot to do with free movement of people. Yet his document here is supporting free movement of people in all but name. Instead of continuing to import people to run our NHS, should we not be training up people here in Wales, and why, after 20 years of Labour-led government, does this document say that substantial work is still needed to do that?
Why have we got foreigners in our NHS? That's what he's saying, in effect, isn't he? That's what this is about. The National Health Service, like the health service of any other country in the developed world, always relies on doctors from other countries. I don't care where doctors are from, as long as they're good and they deliver service to our people. That's what counts at the end of the day. I'm not interested in where they were born. I'm interested in their medical skills. That's what I have to say to him. Yes, I've spoken to the First Minister of Scotland on this issue. And again, I say to him, the interpretation that he and his former party put on the vote last year is not an interpretation I share. All we know is that people voted to leave the EU. They did not vote for a hard Brexit. They were given the opportunity to vote for a hard Brexit in June. They did not vote for a hard Brexit. And so it falls on all of us in this chamber to try to interpret the viewpoint that people had on that. But I have to say, nobody said to me on the doorstep, not one person, even people who were the hardest supporters of Brexit imaginable, what we need are fewer doctors from abroad in this country. Nobody said that. And so this is, in this document, an attempt to put forward a viewpoint on how migration can be made to work in the future. We've heard nothing from his current party or his former party to add to that debate.
Dawn Bowden.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, when I recently met with farmers in Rumney, there are farmers in Rumney, we discussed many issues relating to Brexit and its potential impact on the rural economy. And contrary to the implications in Neil Hamilton's question earlier, one particular concern that they had was their inability to be able to recruit labour locally, casual labour, seasonal labour, resulting on their reliance on a steady stream of EU migrant labour. Would you agree with me that the availability of a regulated seasonal labour from the EU is necessary in any agreement on the movement of people post-Brexit?
Well, it is hugely important. We know otherwise that there will be serious labour shortages in the agricultural industry, and that is something that has not yet been properly addressed by the UK government. And it comes back to this point again. We need an immigration policy that's sensible, that's fair, that's balanced, and we believe in the document that we produced on Brexit and migration that we've done just that. I don't accept that people voted to leave the EU and then decided to build a metaphorical or real fence around the UK. Well, the same, of course, incidentally, keeping the open border with the EU and the Republic of Ireland, which is something that has never been resolved. So this is a way forward that we believe is sensible, fair, and meets, of course, the wishes of the people of Wales that were expressed in the referendum last year.
Michelle Brown.
Presiding Officer, does the First Minister not see that perhaps the reasons we seem to be reliant on migrant workers are twofold? Firstly, there's little incentive to train local people for jobs when they can simply import ready-made qualified workers. And secondly, paying conditions are so poor that it's often only a migrant worker from a country with living standards that are worse than ours who are prepared to be exploited in this way. What are you going to do to reverse the reliance on EU workers and migrant workers?
Well, first of all, we all want to see improved pay and conditions, and it's hugely important that we see the introduction of a proper living wage across our economy, in the private sector as well, and important that we have a UK government that recognises the importance of that. But I am not obsessed with the idea that what we have to do is to check out as many foreign workers as possible, which is effectively what she is saying. And that interpretation is not shared by the people of Wales, as shown by the fact that her party, I don't know if she's still in the party or not, but her party had received such a low percentage of the vote in the election. Does it not tell you something? That the kind of Brexit that you support is not supported by the people of Wales, and we saw that in June.
Cwestiwn 4, Joyce Watson.
Diolch, Llywyd. Will the First Minister make a statement on Welsh Government action to tackle forced labour in Wales?
Yes, we're committed to working with police and crime commissioners and partners to tackle slavery, which includes forced labour. In March, we launched our Ethical Employment in Supply Chains Code of Practice to make supply chains transparent and prevent exploitation of workers. The first, indeed, for Wales and for the UK.
I thank you for that answer. The National Crime Agency recently said that modern-day slavery, or forced labour, is now so widespread that ordinary people are likely to come unwittingly into contact with victims every single day. Those victims will be found within the key industries, particularly highlighting agriculture, domestic and social care, fishing, food processing, car wash and construction. And currently, under the Modern Slavery Act, only companies with an annual turnover over of £36 million a year have to declare what steps they have taken to stop slavery within their supply chains. And I think you will agree that most companies in Wales do not reach that threshold. So, First Minister, what discussions have you had with the anti-slavery coordinator from Wales about his proposals for a code of practice that companies could sign up to voluntarily?
Well, we did launch the Code of Practice on Ethical Employment and Supply Chains in March. That was aimed at supporting businesses to make supply chains transparent and to prevent workers from being exploited. As I said, that's the first for both Wales and the UK. I know that the Wales Anti-Slavery Leadership Group are raising the issue of slavery through training and awareness raising because, I know she is passionate about this, we want to make sure that Wales is hostile to slavery.
Janet Finch-Saunders.
First Minister, the Anti-Slavery Coordinator for Wales, Stephen Chapman, has admitted that there could be cases of modern-day slavery within the Welsh social care sector. And he's actually stated that, somewhere down the line this is going on. Across such a large sector in Wales, problems may well be further down the public supply chain. What action are you taking to ensure that where services are provided by our public bodies in Wales, that there is a distinct and robust measure to present any form of modern-day slavery in Wales?
Well, through the training, of course, that they already indicated that the leadership group has taken forward, and secondly, of course, through the Code of Practice itself. And I know that the coordinator is passionate in terms of ensuring that we drive slavery out where it is, even where it is hidden, of course, in some organisations. She mentions the social care sector. She wasn't claiming to have evidence, in fairness, that happened, but she was quoting what might be happening in Wales. We work very closely with the coordinator to make sure that Wales, as I say, becomes hostile to slavery.
David Rowlands.
Diolch, Lewis. First Minister, some time ago, I brought to your attention the plight of those immigrants who were forced to work in the car valeting trade. I highlighted that they were working for less than £3.50 an hour, 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, in effect under slave labour conditions. Your reply at the time was that this did not fall in the remit of the Welsh Government. Well, given that the problem of slave labour in Wales is a growing one, 47 cases reported in 2014, 71 in 2015, and 124 cases in 2016, is it not now incumbent upon the Welsh Government to use all its powers to intervene, including levering local government to explore the possibility of closing down these iniquitous facilities?
Well, local government already has that power, of course, in terms of its trading standards obligations. If the member has evidence that is happening, I'd be pleased to look at that evidence and then pass it on to the appropriate prosecuting authority. What he describes as unacceptable, but it's hugely important that there is evidence to be able to take this forward, eventually, hopefully, of course, to a successful prosecution.
Cwestiwn 5, Dai Lloyd.
Diolch yn fawr, Llywydd. Pa asesiad y mae Llywodraeth Cymru wedi wneud o'r tir lithriad diweddar yn ardal Panteg Ystaflwynir?
Wel, fi'n gwybod bod yna gyfarfod ar yr ail ar hugain o fis Awst, lle oedd swyddogion o'r Llywodraeth wedi ymuno a chyngor Castell Nedd Port Talbot mwyn ystyried ffordd ymlaen. Fe ni wrth gwrs fel Llywodraeth yn ystyried unrhyw beth mae'r cyngor yn gweud pan bod yn rhoi sylwadau i ni, fel gafodd i gytuno yn y cyfarfod, dwi'n deall.
Ie, diolch am yr ateb yna, ac oedd rhaid ni'n rhan o'r cyfarfodydd yna hefyd, ond mae'n wir i ddweud bod yr digwyddiad yma, yr tir lithriad yma, wedi bod yn dipyn o ergyd i deuluoedd yn lleol, ac wedi cryn dipyn o ansicrwydd hefyd yn ardal Ystaflwynir. Nawr, gan fod hyn yn ddigwyddiad anarferol iawn, heb i debyg, a wnewch chi fel Llywodraeth Cymru wneud ymrwymiad cyhoeddus heddiw i roi help ariannol ychwanegol i gyngor Castell Nedd Port Talbot i ddelio efo'r mater, yn ogystal ag unrhyw gronfeydd Ewropeaidd sy'n agored i ni ddelio efo'r sefyllfa unigryw yma.
Allai ddeall, wrth gwrs, fel mae'r teuluoedd yn teimlo fel, o achos y ffaith maen nhw'n gyfagwynebu rhywbeth fel hyn, Yn y cyfarfod, mis Awst, y cytundeb oedd y bydd y cyngor yn dod nôl I ni gyda'r manylion. Dwi'n meddwl ddim wedi digwydd eto. Unwaith hwnna'n digwydd, wrth gwrs, felly allwn ni ystyried a thrafod y peth ymhellach.
Jeremy Miles.
Can I thank Dialogue for bringing this question to you this afternoon, First Minister. There's been a history of landslides in that particular part of my constituency. The new hazard stems from landslides arising in previously thought to be low-risk areas. You'll understand the anxiety of the households who've been asked to vacate their properties and the anxiety felt by the broader community, not least as the Council reassesses the hazard in the area generally. We would welcome any support which the Welsh Government can give both to the community and to the Council in resolving this issue, and also perhaps given that a number of government portfolios interests are engaged in this, for there to be a joined-up approach in the support which the Welsh Government is able to provide.
It's not yet clear what the nature of that support would be, which is why we look forward to receiving the representations from the Council in order for us to look at this further. But as far as the people there are concerned, I can well understand that they want to have certainty as quickly as possible. We're keen to do that, and we'll continue to work with the Council in order for that to be delivered.
Susie Davis.
Diolch yn fawr, Llywydd. Well, perhaps there is an area where Welsh Government can give immediate support, and it's this. You may remember that in the meeting to which was referred to earlier, an independent report came to light which suggested that the affected area was the least likely to experience landslide or slippage, and nature defied that report. So there may be space here for Welsh Government to be able to help Neath Talbot, help define the terms of reference for the new report that's been commissioned in order to establish whether the 150 homes now potentially at risk are at risk. And that's something that's direct in additional to the financial support that Dialogue has suggested. So that's very specific support I think you can give early on.
Well, we're content to work with the Council, of course, to see what support we can provide in terms of the commissioning of any new report. And again, we await the Council's representations in that regard.
Cwestiwn 6, Lee Waters.
Llywydd, will the First Minister commission a full early-stage feasibility study into a Swansea Bay metro network?
Well, we have funded development work on the outline concept of a metro for South West Wales in this financial year via the Local Transport Fund. Swansea County Council, or I should say the City and County of Swansea, is coordinating this work in partnership with the other local authorities in the South West, and the project is progressing well.
Thank you, First Minister. Since Theresa May's government reneged on their promise to electrify the railway line to Swansea and the West, this has thrown into sharp relief the connectivity of the whole Swansea Bay city region. I welcome the support for the concept for a modern, joined-up public transport network. I think what we need to see now is a detailed feasibility study so we can properly understand how communities in the Llanelli constituency can link up with other communities right across the city region by both rail, bus and active travel.
Well, the project has begun well. A workshop was held with regional planning officers in May. It provided the framework for the emerging concept, so that work is ongoing. But yes, I share the members' disappointment at the breaking of a promise by the UK government to electrify the main line as far as Swansea. I well remember the then Secretary of State, Cheryl Gillan. Cheryl Green is the leader of the Lib Dems in Bridgend. There we are. Cheryl Gillan, there we are. She won't forgive me for that, Cheryl Gillan, neither of them I suspect. But I well remember her saying that it was beyond question that the line would be electrified as far as Swansea, and the money has gone. We go looking for it. I suspect that we'll find it in Belfast.
Susie Davis.
Diolch yn fawr, Llywydd. Well, I'm pleased that there's growing support for this idea. It's something that Mike Hedges has raised in the chamber previously, and something that I've spoken on as well. When we met the Shadow Board, as a group of local assembly members last December, they said that transport infrastructure was not part of their thinking on the city deal. So I'm pleased that things have moved on that. But it's something I've also mentioned to the Association of British Ports, which affects a number of the constituencies within the deal area, who have a strong record on logistics and who seem to be playing no part in the city deal discussion at all. So I'm wondering if a feasibility study were to be commissioned, will it include space for these for the ports within the deal area? And will there be space within the city deal for any findings of that report, even accepting that the financial support for the city deal is pretty generous?
Well, we have to remember, of course, that the city deal is driven by local authorities and not by us. It's a partnership between UK government, with Welsh government and with local authorities, but it's the local authorities working together to prioritise and to engage. What I will do, however, is I'll pass her comments on to the local authorities and ask them what they're doing to engage with ABP particularly. She's asked about that, and I will, of course, share that response with her.
Dai Lloyd.
Diolch yn fawr, Llywydd. Ymhellach i'r egwyddor o sefydlu metro. Ydych chi'n cytuno fod hyn yn gyfle i ni greu, fel man cychwyn, system fysys sydd wedi ei rheoli a'i ddilifro gan gynghorau lleol yn hytrach na chwmnïau bysys preifat?
Ydw. Wrth gwrs, bydd y pwerau'n dod i ni yn ystod y misoedd nesaf, ac wrth gwrs mae yna gyfle wedyn ni ystyried am ha ffordd y bysau cael ei reoli. A ni'n gwybod, wrth gwrs, bod yna achos cryf i sicrhau bod y system yn cael ei ail sefydlu lle mae fe'n bosib i gynghorau i rhedeg gwasanaethau yn y pen draw i hunain neu trwy defnyddio franchise, ond wrth gwrs ni waan sicrhau bod mwy o reolaeth dros bysau lleol na sydd wedi bod yn wir am y blynyddoedd diwethaf.
Jeremy Miles.
I echo the comments Di Lloyd made about the importance of buses for those of us with constituencies which are not realistically going to be served by any feasible rail-only solution. Would any feasibility study, would he commit that any feasibility study commissioned also considers the use of modern technology, such that I know the Cabinet Secretary of Economy has been looking in his bus congestion work on the use of technology to ensure that buses can operate in a really properly integrated system? Would any feasibility study reflect those principles as well?
Yes, it will need to. I mean, there are a number of ways which you can deliver a metro. Some is heavy rail, some is light rail, fast buses, the possibility of dedicated bus lanes. There are any number of ways where a proper metro system can be delivered, and it's hugely important that any study is able to look at emerging modern technology, particularly in order to facilitate quicker transport options for the public.
Cwestiwn 7, Rhiannon Pasmo.
What is the Welsh Government doing to protect and promote the rights of disabled people in Wales?
Well, our framework for action on independent living is currently being reviewed. We have worked closely with disabled people and disability organisations across Wales to ensure we're making tangible progress in promoting and protecting the rights of disabled people. And, of course, that is something we will continue to do in the future.
Minister. Teresa Dejner, the chair of the UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, has called it a human catastrophe following their inquiry into the way that the UK treats its disabled citizens. Atos and Capita, who are tasked by the UK Government with carrying out PIP assessments, have earned over £500 million of public money since 2013, while over 61% of those who appealed against their PIP assessments in their tribunal have won their case. Will the First Minister outline what the Welsh Government is doing to support disabled people in Wales during the unprecedented reductions in their incomes by the UK Government?
Well, we cannot reverse what the UK Government has done. I can't disagree with the use of the phrase human catastrophe. There is something wrong with the system where 61% of cases are appealed successfully. There's something wrong with it. That appeal rate is far, far higher than you would get in the criminal courts and far higher than you would find elsewhere. And that is a sign that the initial assessments, bluntly, are mainly wrong. And if the assessments are wrong, the system is broken. And this is something for the UK Government to deal with. We'll continue to work, of course, with disabled people, as I said, and disability organisations to act as their advocate in overturning a system that's clearly not working.
Mark Isherwood.
Diolch, and clearly it's a matter the cross-party group on disability has also been taking evidence on. I think it's 80% of appeals by people with sensory loss are successful, indicating the problem that stands before us. So we do share your concern on this matter. But at a meeting of the cross-party group on disability in North Wales in June, and similarly a meeting of the cross-party autism group in North Wales in September, a concern was raised with us by representatives of local disabled people and local disabled people themselves about the Welsh Government's proposals for the Welsh Independent Living Grant. As you know, since it was transferred to Welsh Government from UK, you had a temporary scheme with local authorities. You announced that with effect from 2018-19, responsibility and funding will be transferred to local authorities. And disabled people are concerned that that will remove the ability of them to live independently and support their high-level care and support needs. What assurance can you give to them, therefore, that safeguards will be in place to ensure that the funding goes where it's intended, that assessments will still be done on a person-centred basis with the recipients of the grant, and that disabled people themselves will be the lead voice with authorities in establishing their needs?
We would expect local authorities, of course, to fulfil their obligations to disabled people and to put sufficient funds aside in order for their financial needs to be recognised and satisfied. Of course, local authorities are answerable to their electorate if they pursue policies that the electorate deem to be unacceptable.
Sian Gwenllian.
Mae symiau bychan o arian yn gallu gwneud gwahaniaeth mawr i rai teuluoedd sydd efo plant neu blentyn anabal. Dwi wedi sôn am rei enghreifftiau penodol yn y siambr yma cyn heddiw o deuluoedd yn fetholaeth i sydd wedi elwa ar grantiau bychan gan helpu wella ansawdd bywydau plant anabal gan gynnwys gwella iechyd meddwl, cryfhau perthynas teuluol a chynyddu cyfleoedd hamdden. Ydych chi'n cytuno efo fi fod yr arian mae'r Llywodraeth yn ddarparu i'r Family Fund yn ffynhonnell gwerthfawr o gymorth ac y dylid i gynnal o dros y blynyddoedd nesaf?
Ni'n deall wrth gwrs bod yna gronfeydd sy'n yn lafar o wyniaeth i'r gorau i fywydau bobl. Yn anffodus, wrth gwrs, dwi ddim yn sôn am y gronfa hyn yn uniongyrchol. Yn anffodus, ni wedi gweld toriadau yn y cyllideb ni, a mae yna benderfyniadau anodd sy'n goffa cael ei wneud yn ystod blwyddyn ariannol. Ond, ni moyn sicrhau bod ni'n gallu blaenoriaethu beth sy'n gweithio a beth sydd ar lles mwyaf i deuluoedd. A hwnna bydd yn arwain ni fel Llywodraeth dros wythnosau ynglyn â cyn bod y gyllideb terfynol yn cael ei gyhoeddi.
Cwestiwn 8, Susie Davies.
Will the First Minister provide an update on the Swansea Bay City deal?
Well, it's making good progress, developing the proposals that will unlock government funding.
Thank you for that answer. Later today, of course, we'll be debating the Parliamentary Review on Health and Social Care, which has already identified the underexploited potential of IT and other life science technology in the reformation of those services. And for me, this has got Swansea Bay City deal written all over it. What recent discussions have you had with local government leaders about pinning down the governance structure with balanced representation from the private sector? We mentioned the ports earlier, so that we can see some accelerated activity on the deal.
Well, these are issues ultimately, as I say, for local authorities, but I'm confident that the governance structure they have in place is appropriate and effective. And we will work with them, as will the UK government, to continue to deliver the city deal. I have to say, what will be immensely important in terms of delivery for Swansea will be the delivery of the Swansea Bay Tidal Lagoon. And even though we know that an independent review has said it should move forward, we still have no action from the UK government. I'm sure she shares this frustration as well. This has been months and months and months and months when this is not an isolated example, is it? When no decision has been taken on a project that would deliver 1,000 jobs, that would help to revitalise many of our ports. That would help immensely the Swansea Bay area, working, of course, in tandem with the city deal itself.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch, Llywydd, ac jyst ar y pwynt yna, mae'r datblygiad ymolyn llanw hefyd yn mynd i cyfoethogi cyfleoedd ar gyfer posladdoedd, dwi'n meddwl, yn adael dinas fanball Bai Abertawe, ond ni'n falch o fod yn dybyniad wrthos diwetha yn San Steffan gyda'r Gweinidog Ken Skates oedd yn trafod y cyfleoedd ar gyfer posladdoedd ni. Pa mor bwysig yw bod ynni o'r môr, pa bynnag ffordd mae'n cael ei datblygu, yn rhan o cryfhau y cyfleoedd ar gyfer posladdoedd a cyfleoedd hefyd i cyfoethogi'r cytundeb Bai Abertawe.
Holl bwysig, achos ni'n gwybod wrth gwrs, os bydd hynny'n cael ei greu yn y môr, felly mae rhaid cael llefydd lle mae modd i gynhyrchu y peirianwaith, i sicrhau bod y peirianwaith yn cael ei gynnal hefyd, ac wrth gwrs mae yna gyfleoedd fanna i borthladdoedd fel Port Talbot, mwyn creu swyddi fanna, mwyn adeiladu rhai rannau o'r dociau ym Port Talbot, ond does dim ateb dyn ni eto o Lywodraeth y Daearn Unedig. A mae'n holl bwysig bod nhw'n sylweddoli. Ta hwn yw'r ffordd ymlaen ynglyn â chreu ynni gwyrdd, ta hwn yw'r ffordd ymlaen ynglyn â chreu swyddi yma yng Nghymru, ond mae rhaid i ni cael ateb ac ateb positif wrthyn nhw.
Diolch i'r Prif Weinidog. Yr eitem nesaf yn agenda ni yw'r datganiad busnes, a dwi'n gael...